Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us. We have a range of experts here from the car industry. We have Julia Pallé from ABB Formula E. We have Kristen Siemen, nice to see you again after the dinner last night, from GM, and Anna Smart, Vice President of Global Public Policy at ChargePoint. So, Kristen, maybe I can start with you. I mean, we want to talk about the EV revolution and what can governments do, what can regulators do to sort of speed this along. What are you guys hoping to see? What works and what doesn't work? But perhaps we could start with the news that we saw last night. There was a pact announced at COP from some of the major car makers, including GM, committing themselves to phasing out internal combustion engine car sales by 2040. You guys are obviously earlier than that. I also noticed that the US and China are not signatories to it, didn't sign up to it. Can you just talk, were you disappointed by that? And can you talk to us a little bit about what this agreement might mean?
Sure. Yeah. No, we're very excited to partner with others in the industry, policy, to really make this transition to an all-electric future happen as quickly as possible. We've talked about it, as we made our commitments earlier this year around our carbon neutral plan and our plan to eliminate tailpipe emissions by 2035 in our light-duty vehicles. And so this is just another step of bringing people together to make that happen. We've said all along, we can't do it by ourselves, right? It's going to take public policy, it's going to take governments, it's going to take others in the industry to make that transition happen. It's going to take our partners from a charging infrastructure standpoint and utilities. And so this is a great time to see people come together and make that transition a reality.
And in terms of what you're hearing at this COP, the actions, the announcements we're seeing from governments is you're obviously clearly very, very strong, as you said, strongly behind the EV revolution. Are you hearing enough? Is there enough action here for your industry, for your business to help this along?
I think the exciting thing here at COP is you are seeing the industries come together and really make a commitment from a corporate standpoint alongside with policy. Is it enough? I don't think it's ever enough, right? I mean, we want to see things go as quickly as they can. We talk a lot about equitable climate action and making sure that we're not leaving anybody behind as this transition happens. And so we're hoping that as we come together out of this, that those things continue, those conversations continue, and we bring more sectors together to enable the infrastructure solutions and policies in order to really accelerate the movement.
And where are you seeing the most exciting and interesting developments right now in terms of the incentives, in terms of what governments are doing to incentivize the EV push?
Sure. I mean, there's obviously a lot of news in the U.S. about what's happening with the infrastructure, and the policies that are going on. There's kind of three key areas for us that we see as important. It's consumer incentives and really making that push to enable consumers and customers to see their ability to make the movement to an EV, and whether that's, it doesn't necessarily have to be a tax credit. It can be incentives, things that don't inhibit the early adopters and the first movers. The second is around infrastructure, charging infrastructure, and seeing that, the ability for customers. And if you talk in the U.S., they need to be able to see that they can go from the east to west coast, or they can go from the north to the south, and see that highway, build out. The third is around R&D incentives and really encouraging the investment for companies to be able to make that commitment and really move forward. So I think things are happening. There's still a lot of work to do, and hopefully this will continue to accelerate that.
Yeah. And I'd like to bring you in. I think ChargePoint is the largest network of charging stations in Europe and the US. And we talk a lot about making electric cars and the batteries that go into them and the incentives, incentivizing people to buy them and all of this. But the question I actually get asked most when I tell people that I'm write and edit stories in this space is, what about the charging network? I think there's a very keen awareness out there that electric cars are great, but we're not really seeing. Sometimes I live in London. Sometimes you see charging stations. A lot of the time you don't. Can you talk to us a little bit about what governments around the world are doing to help build out this charging network, and perhaps where are you seeing the most encouraging pushes for this, and where do we need to see more work from governments?
Sure. Well, I think the first part to consider is that you likely are seeing places to charge, you just don't know it. So we're kind of transitioning from that gas station model or petrol station where you need to drive out, fuel, and then leave. With an electric vehicle, you can charge anywhere that you park. So charge at home or at work or when you're around town and shopping. And so building out the opportunities for someone to have access to charging in all those places is what we want to see government continue to support, but also private businesses that see an opportunity to provide charging for their employees or customers, or get people to shop in their store longer or visit that destination and create that seamless ecosystem. And in terms of governments, I mean, we have to talk about the US. Congress passed a big infrastructure bill last weekend, and for the United States to have an investment in infrastructure of this size, it's $5 billion, up to $7.5 billion just for passenger charging vehicles. Then there's also money for port electrification and school buses and municipal buses, and the US has really shifted in its commitments to building out that national network and seeing that it's a global industry, of course. Other countries make similar commitments to both support the build out as well as enable investments through grants and tenders is really going to help us get there. $5
billion on one level sounds like a lot, but I also suspect it's also not a lot. And if you think about just 2040, we're only going to be selling EVs, probably. That's a lot of cars that need to be charged. How much more money, is there like a dollar value that we can put on the amount of money that just needs to be spent on the charging infrastructure in the US?
So $5 billion is a lot compared to where we've been, but it's also just the public government commitment to each of those projects. So the funds will only cover up to 80% of the cost of a charger. With that, on top of it, you add all of the private capital committed, you add utility partnerships as well, which is more significant in the US. And then from there, we expect to see, this is just funding for highway charging. Again, when we're figuring out what this build out of charging looks like, we have to think through all of the different ways that someone could need to charge. And so $5 billion might be a place to start, but it's just a piece of that overall market that will continue to be built out through this acceleration.
And just one thing I'm curious, again, people ask me about a lot. Gas stations are a part of our lives all over the world. I don't know how many there are, but there must be hundreds of millions of them. When you look at a charging future, do you imagine how many of those, how disruptive is the EV revolution going to be to this multi-billion-dollar industry? And if you look 20 years into the future, will all of these gas stations ultimately turn into charging points, and how many of them will survive? I mean, it's a very, very hard question to answer, I know, but how should we think about the gas station? You guys are the ultimate disruptors of the gas station model. So how do you see that change?
And gas stations are actually a great partner for us as well. People built gas stations where it was convenient for fueling. So they're great locations for putting that highway charger that someone might need to drive between communities or take that road trip. And we're finding good partnerships with Fueling and Convenience where they have an interest in providing whatever fueling is necessary, and have people, stop in and shop in that store while they're waiting for their vehicle to fuel. So I think we'll continue to see that network, but we also expect to see charge points and charging stations at every other type of place someone could park. Because again, you're more likely to see charging look like how you would charge your phone right now. If you all had chargers at your tables, you'd probably plug in just because you can, and you want to top off and make sure that you've got the ability to use your phone 3 hours from now. It's the same way with electric vehicles. It'll be seamless. You will find that you plug in when you get into work, or that when you went shopping, or while you were eating at a restaurant downtown, continue to top off throughout that day. And that's what we see as now is what the ecosystem is growing into.
And the charging cables will be too big to lose, hopefully. I spend most of my life, but when I travel, buying cables for my phone.
They're waiting for you.
So Julia, do you want to talk to us a little bit about how Formula E fits into all of this? So we've heard from a big car maker, from a big charging company. You guys are very, very different business model. What are you looking for from governments to help expand your part of the electric car universe?
So basically, we are at the interface of these industries because and I'm very much echoing what my colleagues just say, we are here to help break EV barriers to adoption for the consumer perspective. And we have three key battles: technology, and we use the championship as a technological laboratory to advance the technology because car makers are coming in and they are testing, developing their technologies and then transferring into the road cars that you and I tomorrow will be buying and driving. The perception, because we needed to really kind of like, in a way, refresh the perception of electric vehicles. If you consider that Formula E was created more or less 10 years ago, 10 years ago, the image of electric vehicles was not exactly the most exciting thing, whereas now the cars you see on the streets and also kind of like the range of options is absolutely fantastic. So people kind of like really get attracted and captivated by the fact that they can drive an EV that is really looking good, really cool. And then, very importantly, infrastructure, because infrastructure is kind of like the one thing that will enable us to make it a mass market reality, because we need people to be able to charge. And this needs to be handy, this needs to be kind of like close by home, work, and kind of like very easy to identify and to find, and it needs to be quick. And one of the things that we do within the championship is that we always try and give an answer to the next technological issue that is going to be associated to this EV revolution. We started with the battery, the range anxiety of the drivers, because we knew that people were worried about not being able to do a full trip to go on holidays and so on. We doubled the battery capacity of the cars in just 4 years. Now we're looking at fast charging, ultra fast charging, and that's
how fast is ultra fast?
Couple of seconds.
Seconds, right? Okay.
Yes.
It's a lot of charge.
Yeah. It's very intense in terms of energy demand, but that's what people want. You want to have kind of like just a quick, fast charge and then go back.
And can you talk a little bit about the EU, Europe versus the US, where you've seen the most help coming from governments? You know, is one of them better than the other? What would you like to see more of?
Well, I mean, we really operate globally, so there are definitely kind of like strengths in Europe and strengths in the US. What we see really kind of like on a global outlook and global point of view is that we are kind of like in a moment where governments have understood that EV revolution is not an option. This is the main way forward. And you see these governments taking commitments to stop the sale of what we call ICE, internal combustion engines. And that's, I mean, obviously kind of like a fantastic sign in the sense that we know we have 9 years to cut down emissions globally by 45 or 50%. And electric vehicles is a huge part of the solution because it's a huge part of the problem. Transport accounts for at least a third of the global emissions. And we know it's mainly due to internal combustion engines.
And in terms of consumer demand for your products, where are you seeing the most interest? What kind of products, what geographical areas?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, we are a sort of interface because we are showcasing the cars that you won't be driving yourself. I mean, although you can be very lucky and do a lap in our car, but it's not exactly what the everyday consumer is going to drive. But we're showcasing the technology that will be transferred into their car in a very short time frame, like we're talking 3-4 years max. So, I mean, we have already some models that are using the technology that was developed in the garage just a couple of seasons ago. So it's very much about, again, using the power of sport to captivate the heart, the mind, and the souls of these people so that they see these cars on their streets, because that's one of the uniqueness of Formula E. We race always inner city centers, and people see these electric vehicles that are ultra fast, really looking good, like really sexy cars. And they're like, well, why not me then? I mean, we have the biggest lineup of car manufacturers in all the global championships. So you have many, many options to go in a shop and buy an electric vehicle that you've probably been, racing under the flag of the racing team in the championship.
And Formula E, of course, is all about entertainment as well. Can you give us a sense of, in terms of audience and sponsorship, et cetera, how does the size of that market now, EV races, how does that compare against regular Formula One?
Well, so
how do you see that audience growing over time?
I mean, the audience is constantly growing, so does the sponsorship and the lineup of the teams and the manufacturers. What is very important to us is that we're targeting kind of like the Gen Z audience, so really the young generation, the young people that are going to be impacted by climate change and do demand not only kind of like entertainment with a purpose, but do demand kind of like real, clearer solutions to live sustainable lifestyles. And again, that's what we are here for. We are showcasing that the future is going to be electric and that you'll have many options to live this sustainable lifestyle. And what is also interesting is that we see that we're really kind of like attracting a pool of sponsors and partners that do want to come up in the championship to showcase the innovation that they are themselves creating in their own verticals and industries. So, I mean, I'm taking a couple of examples. We work, I mean, with Heineken that developed recently their Greener Bar, and the Greener Bar is an innovation where it's the first time that a bar has been conceived with the principles of circular economy. And that matters because they've been developing that in our platform together with some of our other partners and ourselves. And they're going to be kind of like implementing that and scaling that up in the rest of their industry, in the rest of their activation. So that's how you raise the standard, but also you showcase that Pallé is here to test not only kind of like the technology of the cars, it's to test the technologies around how to live more sustainable lifestyles. And then not only raise the bar in the different industry and showcase their leadership, but again, showcase to the consumers. That's, I mean, we are here to provide solutions, because what is very important through the entertainment is that we don't want to be doom and gloom. We want to show that the future is going to be extremely exciting, that the future is going to be sustainable, but it's not going to feel less, it's actually more.
How fast can the fastest Formula E car go?
Well, we can go up to 250 kilometers per hour, but we could.
And how does that compare against a regular Formula One?
I mean, that's less, but the cars are restricted in terms of speed, so we could go faster because we're racing city centers. So the way we are designing our tracks intends that, I mean, we can't go as fast because that would be like literally too dangerous for the drivers. And I mean, I won't quote any team, but I mean, once a team principal told me that the drivers don't wanted the car faster, so
they did not want it faster.
No, because they were already kind of like a lot
pushing the limits.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry to take the conversation from sexy fast cars back to the dreary topic of infrastructure and infrastructure spending. But Kristen, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about, for an audience here, this is an international audience, for people who aren't perhaps very familiar with the nuts and bolts of the infrastructure bill and what other things that Biden is trying to do. Can you tell us a little bit about what was in the infrastructure bill for the EV universe? We heard a little bit about the charging aspect of it and what you hope to get from the rest of Biden's climate agenda.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's lots of things in there to make sure that we continue to make this movement reality for the U.S., right? And the corporates and the partnerships working together on that. I'm not an expert on everything that was actually made it and didn't make it, but I think what's important is we talk about, it really just accelerates that transition, and where charging is going to be a reality for all of us going forward. I loved what you talked about with, where people go to charge, because one of the things that we're doing too is working with our dealerships our dealerships are our front line, and a lot of what's happening from a policy standpoint is making sure that as this transition occurs, people don't get left behind, whether it be, a lot of discussion around our union workers and the incentives around manufacturing that takes place in the U.S. is one of the things that's really getting pushed. And as we work with our dealers, another big important piece for us is having them help us understand where charging is important. They're the front line to the customer. The customer, and they know in their community where charging stations are going to be valuable, whether it's a local community center, the high school football field, where the community goes. Over 90% of the population in the U.S. is less than 10 miles away from a GM dealership. And so to have that connection point and really be able to see how it's a reality in their lifestyle helps that transition.
And do you have any closing thoughts on how government and regulators can help you?
Yeah, I mean, following up on what's also missing from the infrastructure bill is the incentives for the vehicles. And when we're thinking about this whole system we need to make sure that we're both incentivizing and making possible for everyone to get behind the wheel of an electric vehicle or ride in an electric vehicle or work with an electric vehicle, and then at the same time incentivize the build out of the infrastructure. You don't want someone to go skydiving and not give them a parachute at the same time. We need to work hand in hand on building out the charging points, as well as make sure that there's all the great vehicle options on the table. So in the US, Congress is significantly looking at how do we separately in different legislation incentivize more vehicles, but globally seeing announcements this week and hearing more commitments to creating those zero-emission vehicle goals or mandates that help send the right signals that it's time to develop new models of EVs, consider we want people to have options. So when you're going to buy an electric car, it's not that you picked the one that was electric versus the other. It's, okay, you wanted an all-wheel drive vehicle, or you needed that minivan to enable you to take your family places. Well, now there's an electric option. Yeah. So seeing those policies go hand in hand is really what we hope to cut out of this week.
Well, we are out of time, but before I go, I did want to draw all of your attention as well to our hyperdrive news vertical. So this is part of Bloomberg Green, and it's our look at the future of electric cars. I think there should be the front page of the website up on the screen there. It's also a daily newsletter, which I would urge you all to sign up for. We think it's the best in the business, and it tackles all of these different issues from our reporters all over the world about the EV revolution. So please sign up. And with that advertisement for our newsletter, thank you all very much for joining us so early today. It was a really interesting conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.